Welcome back. Today I'm going to continue with the exploration of deep water mathematics. And yesterday we had derived an equation for uniqueness. Today I'm going to derive an equation for the emergence of uniqueness. And that really looks at how uniqueness manifests practically. So as a quick reminder, the equation that we had come up with yesterday, which is an equation for uniqueness, we had signified uniqueness as being the signature or SIG, and this is equal to an element x times an integer a plus an element y times an integer b, and the second component may repeat itself from 0 to n times. So this is the primary component, this is the secondary component, and x is an element from one of the sets that we had derived or come up with a couple of days ago, and there were 4 sets. So x is an element from any of the elements of the 4 sets, and that is the set of omnipresence, the set of omnipower, the set of omniscience, the set of omniloving. Similarly, the secondary element is derived from the elements of the same set. So we have the set of presence, the set of omnipower, the set of omniscience, and the set of omniloving. And a and b are integers such that a is greater than b, and both a and b are integers. So a gives the relative strength of the primary component, and b gives the relative strength of the secondary components, and a is always greater than b. Now, when we think about an equation for the emergence of uniqueness, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our universal development model that we had approached, or that we had put in place a few weeks ago. And to summarize, that developmental model is characterized by some state of fullness, and from that fullness in space there's an emergence, and that emergence goes through a definite trajectory that goes through these phases: the physical, the vital, the mental, and then onto an integrative phase where there may be, or there is, movement between all the phases, and then onto the birth of force, which is the aspect or the signature that's embedded in the fullness emerging in its purity, and then a contextual phase where this force becomes impersonal and can act across in the area of any time-space boundary in a causal wedge. And so this here is the developmental model, the universal development model that we had come up with. And now what we want to see is how the signature, the unique signature, manifests differently and progressively across these different states of this developmental model. So in the state P, I would hypothesize that the signature is modulated by the constant pi. And pi, of course, is what's required to arrive at any kind of circle or sphere. And what that implies is that the signature is bound within a limited space, or even the expression of the signature is bound, and we may not even know what the signature is. Now, in V, the vital phase, I would hypothesize that the signature is modulated by the constant E, and that's the Euler constant. And basically here what we would see is a lot more experimentation, going in different directions, but perhaps tending toward some direction. So there's growth, and in the phase M, I would hypothesize that the signature is modulated by a Gaussian distribution. So I'll represent that by G, and the idea here is that we have some kind of normal distribution, and the mental phase is about rationality, about applying thought. So there tends to be a certain direction, but then there's also a distribution around that and the existence of outliers. And as we get to the integrative phase, I would hypothesize that the signature is modulated by an integrative function, and I'd represent that as G E pi. And basically what's happening here is that there's a breakdown of all the patterns that had existed previously, and an easier movement between all the different possibilities, so that a truer harmony, a truer integration, and the sense of love naturally arises in this phase. Now, I would hypothesize that at the phase F, that's at the birth of force, so the birth of force, or the signature in its purity, which is embedded here within this sphere, or that arises from fullness, it requires a breaking down and exercising of getting to know all the different patterns, and then breaking it down, and then from that cauldron, if you will, something else arising. And I would hypothesize that the signature is modulated by the constant c, which is the speed of light. And the reason why I choose the speed of light is because now force has arisen, so the signature arises independent of circumstance, and it becomes a true source of creativity. And I would say that in the contextual phase, so that is where the force plays at an impersonal level, the signature is going to be modulated by an integrative function which is equal to 1, and meaning that everything within that causal wedge under a certain time-space boundary is all of the same substance, or there's a sense that it all belongs or is one thing, and the force is free to act within that in any way that it wants. So that is how I would characterize the emergence of uniqueness. And I would go on to say that if we were to create an equation for the emergence of uniqueness, let me just signify that by signature and E for emergence, and I would say that that's going to be equal to X, where X can be each of these different signature modulations. So we have P, V, M, I, F, C, and so X, if X is P, then obviously we have signature modulated by pi. If it's V, we have signature modulated by E. If it's M, we have signature modulated by G. If it's I, we have signature modulated by the integrative function G, E, I. If it's F, we have the signature being modulated by C, and if it's contextual, then we have the signature being modulated by an integrative function equal to 1. And that's the equation for the emergence of the signature. If I were to graph this, I would say that here we have the emergence of the signature, and here we have the different phases P, V, M, I, F, C. Then I would hypothesize that the emergence is not so strong as it goes from P to V to M. At I it begins to become much stronger. F, of course, and C, so perhaps it's like this, where F and C it's like that. So it becomes asymptotic over here, as it is, tends to be asymptotic over here. So this is how I would characterize an equation for the emergence of the signature.